Hey, Brian, welcome to the show. As way getting started, tell us about yourself.
Well, Brian, first off, thank you very much for having me today. I am currently speaking to you from my home in Tampa, Florida, and I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and grew up there, and then went on to the University of Florida, where I had the privilege of participating as an equipment manager with the football team, and now I'm into sales since then. So
Yeah.
that was a long time ago, but the reason I mentioned that is it became somewhat important to my management style.
Well, tell us about that.
Okay, good. The family. I am the last of six, and my four older brothers are all athletes, and a number of them went on into coaching. One of them into professional football coaching, and I have always been part of that world too, with athletics. And coaching is really, I think, a great learning area for what we do day in and day out, which is we coach.
Yeah.
We just don't coach X's and O's as far as moving around on a playing field, but we darn sure coach X's and O's as far as how to move through a sales process.
So, being the youngest of six, you didn't get much coaching at home, did you?
No, yes, I was coached. You're correct. Oh, and or beat. So one of the two.
I was trying to be nice,
Yes.
especially, oh, five older
But
brothers and two parents, huh?
yes. Well, the interesting, it's four older brothers, one sister,
Oh,
but the interesting thing is my mother saw a profile on public TV or something where they talked about where each child, as they go down the lineage, will fall professionally. And once you get past four, the likelihood of them being in the sales field goes up to like 80, 85%.
wow.
And the reasoning for that was that you had to spend your entire childhood negotiating
Leading.
and selling.
Yeah. Well, I think there is a lot to birth order and where you fit into the world.
Yeah,
And I've seen it a lot. And I've seen a lot of middle kids do well in sales because they don't get the
same.
attention. Yeah, same thing,
Yeah,
right? And a lot of the youngest, the parents are trained by the time they have the youngest.
oh
They're
yeah.
not going to get any better, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely correct. Are you
Or
bleeding?
the oldest takes all
Yeah.
the bullets. He's the pioneer,
Yep.
and she's the pioneer, and they're
Yep.
usually the leaders and the people that kind of can the peacemakers.
Perfectionist often also
Yeah. How'd
because
you get
they
into
because they.
sales?
I started selling actually when I was 14 years old, at a place in Pittsburgh called Pool City, which sold swimming pools in the summer and Christmas trees in the winter, and artificial Christmas trees. And that was actually my first experience with commissions, that allowed me to say that's pretty cool because I can make more than just at that time. I think it was
Oh
a
no.
dollar 75 an hour, right? Minimum wage. And it actually ended up paying for the portion of my college that was not covered by scholarship. So it was a great thing. And I went to college with the intent of being in sales,
You
which
did?
at that time in the 80s there wasn't really a major for selling.
No.
So I picked journalism and public relations.
And was it just that experience selling pools and Christmas trees, or was your dad in sales, or?
No one was in sales. Came from a blue collar family, and no selling anywhere. In fact, for most of our neighborhood and such, where they were either union or blue collar hourly, the aspect of having variable pay was quite threatening, and was not something that made folks feel comfortable, especially my mother, as an example.
Yeah.
But I found it to be quite positive, and I was interested in that. probably one of the reasons that led me to be entrepreneurial as well, is the aspect that risk brings reward.
And were they looking at it as just downside and you were looking at it as upside?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
have a shirt that says half full, right? So that says a lot.
Yeah. And why did you get into sales leadership then?
Sales leadership actually is something that goes to the coaching aspect,
Yeah.
to where it is really enjoyable to be able to see others have success. I originally got into sales leadership in the pharmaceutical field with a company back then that was called Wyeth. I started with A.H. Robbins, all of them. It's now Pfizer after the, I don't know, 15th acquisition or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But was there till 97. And that leadership component was quite good because my first experience in becoming a leader there was as a district manager, and I got to hire 7 people right from the outset. So that became a pleasant experience to be able to go through the hiring process in the early 90s, then go through the training process and watch people develop
Yeah.
in new territories. And they all did quite well. And one of the things that again from siblings and other coaches that I admire really emphasize that it's all about your people, that you need to be sure that the blame sets with you and the success sets with them, and try to do that, as well as the other thing that we've always emphasized on our teams is teamwork. And that is very challenging when you have folks that sometimes are competing for the same pie.
Yeah.
So that becomes an interesting dynamic. And if you, I've always had good luck with people that have participated in team sports. I think because you understand at an early age that it's about wins and losses, and it's also about dependencies on others around you, and it's not simply just one person.
Yeah. And what do you look for when you're interviewing and building a team?
The primary thing that I've always had good luck with is work ethic, and looking for not necessarily, in fact, um, not usually even experience in the exact vertical or field that I'm in. It's the ability to sell something and to prove that you have been able to work hard. Hard work, whether it be athletics or many other things, can make up for a lot of things. In fact, I've been watching the Michael Jordan Last Dance
Yeah.
component, and it's amazing the amount of work that he put in to be the championship level player that he is and was. And I think it's the same thing here is in selling, is that it is a lot about the hard work. And also once somebody says to you that, hey, Brian, you're lucky. If I could have the podcast that you have, it would be easy, but my world is so much more challenging. Well, the only reason it looks easy is because you've worked hard, and that's what I typically look for, is somebody that has a really good work ethic and has proven the ability to sell something successfully.
Yeah. And have you ever found a false positive with that? You know,
Oh, of course.
because
Sometimes I wish I were perfect at hiring.
right,
None of
because
us are.
you find the person who's really busy and they do work hard, but not on the right things, not at the right
Absolutely.
level.
Absolutely. Which is where, and you have all your different training aspects of interviewing. I've always been trained in the aspect of past performance is the best predictor of future performance.
Yeah.
So it's all about telling me examples of how, what it was that you were doing, how you did it, and what were the results of what you did. I've been told that I'm a challenging interviewer, mainly because I don't speak. I ask you questions, and you speak, right? It's all about, well, it's again the way I was trained, is that it's all about, if I'm the one talking, then you as the applicant are interviewing me, as where if I'm supposed to be interviewing, you should be doing all the talking. So that hopefully allows us to do a more better comparison and eliminate some of those false positives, but nobody's perfect.
And I love those analogies to those documentaries because I can watch them over and over again.
Hmm.
But you see a mindset there that
Absolutely.
that laser focus and the desire to win is all encompassing.
Yes. And I'm actually seeing my son is a cross country runner. His coach is a big believer in that, in Michael Jordan, the last dance component, as he said, that's a lot about me. And watching it, and I see those same dynamics play out in the way that he coaches the boys, and the boys just really truly admire him. So and he's won state championships, so again it translates over. And the thing about Michael Jordan, what he would always say is, I'm only asking you to do what I do.
Yeah.
He's a very demanding teammate, but he said, I do everything I'm asking you to do. And I think that's important also in leadership.
And because you do see both athletes and salespeople, because I think they are the athletes of the business world,
Hmm.
where you're only as
Yeah.
good as your last game.
And that frustrates folks to hear, right?
Yeah.
Because it's about the scoreboard, and the scoreboard, at the time you get to celebrate the scoreboard, it's already over. And they're already saying, you know, leadership is saying, okay, that's great, but that was yesterday.
Yeah.
and and
Congratulations.
let's talk about let's talk about today. And by the way, it's going to be even harder the second time. So that's the nature of our game, right? Is
It
we
is.
are we are in a very accountable part of business, and it is all about wins, losses. I think that's why there's many folks that do use sports as a comparison. Another one is military,
Yeah.
right? Because you're fighting for that piece of turf, and it's either you're going to get it or they're going to get it. So
Right. There's no second place.
correct, correct. And we have there's to your point, is the I think this comes from Talladega Nights, maybe, is the
We're going through Michael
or it was
Jordan,
actually
Will
or it was
Ferrell.
actually just true NASCAR, to where it might have been Bill Elliott, or no, um, gosh, I'm forgetting who it was, but the line goes is that second place is first loser.
Right.
That's a harsh
Well,
way to put it, but you're
yeah.
first loser.
Yeah. I mean, but like, unlike because I ran cross country, there is a second place. In
Yes,
sales, there's no difference between second place and last place.
correct,
Both make the same amount on the deal, zero.
correct, correct, correct.
And that
Yeah, then
that's a weird way or different way to live for a lot of people,
it
because
is.
a lot of people who go through academia, they look at it that there is a second place, that there's a credential. Look
Mm-hmm.
at my diploma. Look what my credential.
Mm-hmm.
And in sales,
Mm-hmm.
that's nice, but that
Mm-hmm.
customer doesn't care about that.
No, the one benefit that you do gain, especially in our business with Green Dot and Rapid Pay Card, is that we have another chance at the business somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
And the critical factor is taking so very much use athletics as an example, to where you get to play them again later in the season. What did you learn the first time? How are you going to attack it this time? What can you do differently? The other aspect is that there is a bit of relationship building that can go on during that 3-year period after you've lost.
that
to
short
go.
3 year
Yeah.
period.
Yeah, a short 3-year period. But it does, it's interesting. It's when you lose, that's long way out. But if you have to go through an RFP process, you go 6 months past that, that loss, and then you're only really about 12 to 16 months away from the next RFP process.
Yeah.
So you've got to stay involved and stay up to it. But
And
interesting.
how about that mindset when you're interviewing somebody? Do you look for a particular mindset as far as like winning? If they lose, do they take ownership from it? Do they learn from it? Or do they make excuses and defend themselves?
I think, Brian, you hit the nail on the head with the first scenario, is the aspect of when I'm asking you about the situation that you were going in, and we'll typically ask about, a loss, right? Is tell me about your most, it'd be something like, tell me about your most devastating loss. And the devastating loss could be a big deal. It can even be a small deal because
Yeah.
whatever it is, you had some expectation, you counted it to win some award, whatever it might be, and you came up short. So you tell about it, and then what is it that you did? And then finally, what it comes down to is what was the reasons? Were you accountable? And if you're saying, oh, it was all my boss's fault, or
The
the
product.
company gave me bad pricing, or et cetera, whatever it is, that's different than Brian, you saying, I realized that I took that one for granted. I didn't really pay attention to the customer, as where, customer Nancy was telling me all of these things, 1, 2, 3, and I kind of just overlooked it. My competitor paid very much attention to it and ended up finding out that's why I lost.
Yeah.
So what did you do next time, Brian?
Right.
Right. So
And when you hear that pushing the responsibility or not learning, is that game over for you?
that's not good. That's
That's
correct. Yeah.
not good.
Yeah. Would it be for you?
Not at all. I mean, I hear that and
Yeah.
I'm like, and well, that's the problem because sometimes you inherit people and you hear that
Hmm.
and it's like, yeah, everyone can make an excuse and they all sound beautiful, well
Yep.
articulated. But
Yep.
it
Yep.
doesn't matter.
Yep. Now, there are times that your product isn't ready. There's reasons, right? And yet the company put you out there on the playing field.
Yeah.
That's where you as a leader need to take the responsibility of, hey, I recognize this really wasn't ready. We put you out there sooner. We'll try to compensate for that in some way or another. Typically help in some way. But those happen. Those should be a rarity. Uh, Typically, that's not the reason why you're not making quota, right?
Yeah.
It's typically it's up to you, and that's the challenge. This is a performance job.
It is a performance job. And how do you, what do you look for as far as that emotional attachment to winning and losing? Because sales is weird because on the prospecting side, you can't be emotionally attached. You'll drive yourself crazy. But,
Correct. You
but
have to on the prospecting side. You've got to recognize that it's the majority losses. That's where you're looking
yeah,
for, you're looking for a win is actually gauged differently on
right.
the prospecting side, to where if you get somebody to engage, that could be, you should
A
call that a
win.
win,
Yeah.
right? Whatever that is that's going to take you and make you feel more comfortable going back out on that playing field, picking up the phone, making a presentation, whatever it is that gets you out there to do your prospecting. Then when you get to the actual deal, and once you're into the sales process, then you've got to even take encouragement from, is it moving along the funnel,
Yeah.
and are you moving it forward? And that is a critical component of keeping yourself motivated. So I'm looking for those types of cues. Is, does a person see that as an advantage? But also, as a coach, that's oftentimes where you got to point that out. is the aspect of, hey, this deal's moving along. It might not be as fast as you'd like, but it's moving along.
And how about as
And
far as
those aspects.
being able
Go
to
ahead.
articulate how and why they win? Because some people say,
That
"Oh, they love me," and it's like, okay, but why do they
uh,
love you?
yes, correct. The love me part becomes even harder in the virtual selling,
Yeah,
right?
doesn't it? Yeah.
As we're going through today, and that is, and who knows how long the virtual selling will continue. Fortunate thing for us at Rapid, when we first began, my co-partner and I, co-founder and I began in Tampa, and we didn't have money to cover the country. So we were one of the first people to sell virtually using WebEx. In fact, I would have to explain to people what WebEx was, how it worked, et cetera. And it was, so this was kind of back to the future for us. But one of the challenges that we faced back then was hiring somebody that was very much used to that personal shake your hand, take you to lunch, coffee, whatever, very much that relationship face-to-face type of selling, and then putting them in this scenario because the love me component became was a big part of their style.
Yeah.
And in the virtual part, it's hard to get that love me stuff out, to be successful. It is really what we talk about and what we share amongst each other. Part of that team is how you can be successful and how one person has one particular style and another person has another, and maybe they can benefit cross-pollinating a little bit, but your core still remains very individual to you. And you have to try to um, take whatever your best assets are as a salesperson and bring them forward into the arena in which you were forced to play. And if the case is that we're forced to play virtually, then I've got to somehow come up with some way to take my style and make myself successful. And there may be some folks that can't make that transition, and they may have been good in the old days and they're going to struggle today.
How about as far as being able to understand the process other than personality, rapport, but some people are unconsciously competent, but like in football, you have to get the ball from one end to the other. And there's a
Hmm.
lot you can pass, you can run, you can kick. You've got
Hmm.
alternatives, and can the person articulate how they do that?
Absolutely, that is a big part. Is can they? The
Yeah,
other factor is in today's world, with us going to, you used to be able to sell to maybe one or two individuals. We're business to business sales.
right.
And in business to business sales, you maybe you started, if I go back to my beginning days in the 80s to the 90s, I'm selling to you and maybe your partner, right? Or your counterpart. And in today's world, we've got 5 to 7 stakeholders involved in the sales process. And to your point of taking that ball and moving it down the field, is they've got to be able to explain, how do I engage with 7 different stakeholders,
Yeah,
5 different stakeholders, for that all come together and have them vote committee wise for us or
right.
for me. And that is a critical component as to, and each particular stakeholder could be an individual sale unto itself. So I got to sell Brian on what's important to Brian. I got to sell Janine on what's important to Janine, etc. And then find out who the champion is, who's the leader in that whole quorum, and have them buy in and go forward. So
And what's your approach to coaching a rep? Is it through the pipeline review? Is it responding to their request? Is it signals
first off,
that?
I'm coaching coaches.
Are you?
I'm coaching coaches, so
Wow.
that's that. I have leaders that report to me directly. So a big part of my process in for the last since 2011 is is coaching my coaches. So a bit, yes, to the point of coaching through the pipeline, absolutely, that is what they are doing on a regular basis. Also, monitoring the least popular thing of any salesperson is having their leader, their boss, monitor activity. Activity still plays a part. You have to monitor activity. The activity that goes to the work ethic, that goes to the if you've got, the more at bats you have, the more likely you're to hit the ball, etc. So we do have that, and also the monitoring of the activity associated with prospecting. One of the challenges that we do face, even if we make a good hire, is the person gets so focused on pipeline and closing out what's in the pipeline that they forget to fill the other end. So you just keep,
Right,
you're
roller
going with
coaster.
the roller coaster, or the big hit, and then the drought, and then also their panic of, oh my gosh, I know I should have listened to you, boss, but
3 months ago.
now, I don't know yes, correct. Yeah. And that's always. So how do we coach? We coach really trying to focus on, you can't ever lose sight of what's filling that funnel,
Yeah.
and don't get so locked on to these
End of
particular
quarter.
deals.
Yeah.
hmm and don't get locked onto we've don't get locked onto the whales, the big whale that'll, but that'll feed me for a year. Yeah, well, you
You
lose it
forget it.
and you're
Right.
starving. So, we survived as a startup. Now we're part of a publicly traded entity, but we survived as a startup with just what many people would call a bunt, right? Just I wouldn't even call it a base hit, just a
You get
bunch of
hit.
bunts. We got in the field and we won. But then that builds, and you got to build your reputation, and then it goes on. But singles and doubles are, that's your livelihood right there.
Yeah. And what was it like going from being a leader to being a leader of leaders?
That's an interesting component too, because you've got to teach differently. You got to teach how to interview. You've got to teach what is important to coach, and also, um, this sometimes gets me in trouble, but a lot of times it's like parenting, right? Is that the lessons that you learn as you're parenting, are essentially the same lessons that you use in life. Um, and many people would sometimes take offense to that, but think about it. Parenting is dealing with another human, and
Yes.
and that's what we have to do, is deal with another human and try to guide that human into producing the right activity that is going to lead them to success. Because as a parent, I want nothing more than my child to be successful. In fact, I
Right.
want them to be more successful than anybody.
Yes.
So if I can treat you as a colleague like that, as family or team member, that's actually a very positive thing. I want you to be extremely successful. And
Well,
as long as we take pride as leaders in their success, then and not treat it as ours, because it's not really our success. We're just an influencer in that.
well, I think that parenting is a great case study because much like
hmm
football and coaching there and being part of a team, parenting forces you. You have no choice. Right?
Yes.
It's not a
Yes.
part-time job, right?
Yes. Yes.
You
I
can't
can't give I
quit,
can't give my child back. Right.
right?
Yes. Exactly.
And if
Exactly.
if you mess it up, it's only going to come back to haunt you.
Exactly. Then you got to fix it.
Yeah.
So, or try to. So kind of same here, is we all learn together, and we've got to use those lessons. So how do you lead leaders, is the worst thing for them is when you try not to ever say I told you so. Hopefully, you can get them to say, hey, you told me this, but I just didn't want to believe it. And um, and usually the good leaders do in fact come back to you and say, yeah, you said be wary of X, And sure enough, X happened.
Yeah.
I got it.
And
So
is there a magic to balance in that when you, because,
yeah, I think so.
yeah,
I think the balance is that then you've got to just say, you don't harp on it. You just come back and say, again, what did we learn? How do we avoid it?
yeah,
Was that you? Were there anything unique about that circumstance versus this circumstance, etc.? And typically, the only reason that I may have had the ability to say, look out for X is Y. Same as, again, back to a parent. It's because I did. Hey, I learned the hard way. I did
right.
that.
Yeah. Because
Right.
you're not saying it from an authoritarian standpoint. It's more, historic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beware. I got burned this way.
Right.
So
And if you look at any complex leadership role, nobody's sitting by themselves. There's always consigliaries, right?
hmm
People looking
hmm
at it from an unemotional, detached standpoint that isn't clouded by emotion or greed or urgency or fear.
and those are your valuable mentors. I have a number of them throughout my career. One of them has since retired. He's the guy that hired me in pharmaceuticals, Steve Kaiser. Great man. Learned a ton from him. Gave me my first opportunity to leadership. Then also my trainer from back in those days. His name's Paul Perot. He's now a CEO of a worldwide biologic company. But then there's many more. My business partner, who's now my boss, actually, Chris Ruppel, is another. He's my boss, but he's also a colleague that I can count on to take the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
And that's actually another component, is as you get emotional, is share with your mentor counterpart, especially those emails or whatever that you feel like sending off while you're hot, is send it to them first and say, what would you think if you got this?
This, yeah.
And then they get to give you the feedback. That has been a real valuable tool. Also, when you're in a very hot competitive sale, where you've got a competitor maybe really just throwing rocks right at you, and you want to come back and throw that rock in a defensive manner, and that you're the third party in that, right? Your prospect is the one that you better be thinking about, how are they going to perceive that?
Yeah.
And that's where that mentor really comes in as well. And that's where hopefully your leader can be that mentor. But if not, you should have some counterparts. Sometimes it's your colleague that can help you, from a non-emotional perspective, saying, okay, Brian, if I read this, this is the way it would make me think, feel, or my perception would be this.
Yeah. And try and play it out to see,
Yes.
like a chess game. Like, if I move this, what are
Yes.
they going to do?
Right. And also get their advice as to, look, I understand the premise of what you're trying to say is all good, but these words here are inflammatory.
Yeah.
How about you change it to this, rephrase it to that, or emphasize your positive. Always try to sell your positive. Don't push on others' negatives.
Cool.
You can emphasize that difference by emphasizing your positives.
Great. Hey, Brian, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to follow you?
They can go on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn. You can find me there and I'm sorry I didn't come prepared with what my
I'll
search
put
term
it
is, but
in.
look for Brian. Yeah, thank you. Brian Slowick at LinkedIn with green dot and rapid pay card. That's the best place to follow me.